Let's bow our heads. Dear Lord in heaven, we come now for heads bowed before your throne, and we thank you so much, dear Lord, for loving us and being with us to bring us here today, to bring us to this building, to bring us to this sacred space so that we can come together and collectively worship and praise you. Be with us during this time, dear Lord, and help us to set our minds and hearts on you and what you would have us to do as your children and as your people. Dear Lord, may your manservant and the person of myself be decreased, and might you be increased during this time, dear Lord, so that your light will shine and all folks will be drawn to you and your way. In Jesus' name we pray and ask all these things. Amen. Today's text comes from Luke 12:48. The Bible reads, "From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked." And I would like to take a moment to briefly speak to you all today from the topic of stewardship of freedom, voting as our sacred duty. The Emancipation Proclamation was issued on January 1st, 1863 by President Abraham Lincoln. This historic announcement declared that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory were to be set free. This congregation, Second Baptist Church of Detroit, celebrated the Emancipation Proclamation on January 6 of 1863. This church, deeply rooted in the community and the abolitionist movement, held this event to recognize the liberation of enslaved people and to reflect on the continuing struggle for freedom and justice. As a prominent African-American church deeply involved in the abolitionist movement and the Underground Railroad, Second Baptist Church would have been well informed and quick to spread the news within their community. However, it was all about 2 years from the date that Second Baptist celebrated that on June 19th of 1865, Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced that all enslaved people were free to a group of folks who were still enslaved in Galveston, Texas, and were not aware of the Emancipation Proclamation. This day has come to be known as Juneteenth because it commemorates the end of slavery in the United States, and it stands as a powerful reminder of the struggle for freedom and the enduring hope that sustained those who were enslaved. Last night I got a call from a young man I've been mentoring. He has a tremendous opportunity to preach at a congregation that's actually in the state of Texas. And he called me and he said, "I really hope that the congregation receives me well." And I said to him, "You got your priorities mixed up there." I said, "You need to go to that congregation and preach what God has called you to preach. And when you are done, you should be mostly concerned is if you have done what God has called you to do in that moment and in that space." I said, "You were called to bless, not to impress." And I believe that today's message is a blessing message. Maybe not an impressing message, but a blessing message. Because I believe that the world needs this message today and right now. We celebrated Juneteenth this past week, and I want you to know that the celebration of freedom is not something that is static, but freedom requires maintenance. Freedom requires custodians. Freedom requires people who are going to protect it and prolong it, because there's always somebody that's going to be trying to take your freedom away. So as we gather to celebrate Juneteenth, I want us to reflect on the deeper meaning for our lives. This day is not just a historical event. It's a symbol of the ongoing journey towards true freedom. And while Juneteenth marked the end of physical slavery, we recognize that the quest for freedom continues in many forms. We face modern day injustices today. Do you believe it? There's modern day oppressions today that require our action and attention. So we set our minds on Luke 12:48, where Jesus said, for everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. Jesus goes on to say, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. This scripture emphasizes the connection between our spiritual gifts and also our civic responsibilities. Second Baptist has been given a lot. You all today who are here have been given a lot, but from what we were given, much was required of us as a people. And we realize this because we have trailblazed many paths in history. But I believe that we, not just second, but we as a collective people have been given a lot today. And from what we have been given, much more is required. We have been given things that some of our ancestors, frankly, did not have. So what more is required of us if we've been blessed with things that our ancestors did not have? So Jesus says, to whom much is given, much is required. Amen. And much is required of us. And today I just want to highlight the vital role of our participation in democracy. Is that okay with you all? I just want to talk about our participation in democracy, why it is important, because, today is Youth Sunday, and there's a lot of people who I see who talk real crazy about voting. And I believe that somebody did not pull them aside when they were 9 and 11 and 14 years old and say, this is your civic responsibility. Do y'all know what I'm talking about today? And I hope that you can take this message and share it with somebody who's talking crazy about voting so that they too can get some better sense. Because these are serious times that we are living in. And I want us to understand the vital role that voting plays in maintaining and advancing freedom, encouraging us to see voting as an essential aspect of faith and stewardship. It's about stewardship, brothers and sisters. Stewarding what we have been blessed with. And in our community, we are called to understand the struggles and the progress that have shaped us. Our history of voting rights, marred by obstacles and triumphs, mirrors the ongoing journey from oppression to freedom. And the act of voting is a way of honoring the legacy of those who fought for the right to be heard and to participate fully in society. And as we prepare our hearts and minds for this topic, I just want us to remember that our actions, particularly our votes, are powerful. They shape the world we live in and reflect the values we hold dear. And so I just want to talk about briefly the blessing of freedom. The transition from slavery to freedom is monumental, and Juneteenth is a testament to this journey. June 19, 1865, the last enslaved African Americans in Texas learned of their emancipation. This moment is a reminder of the long and arduous road to freedom, marked by struggle and resilience. Think about that. 2 years from the time that Second Baptist Detroit, where we are today, celebrated the Emancipation Proclamation, folks were still enslaved in Galveston, Texas. 2 years later, this speaks to the fact that freedom is a long and arduous road. The civil rights movements that followed were significant steps toward ensuring that freedom was not just a concept, but a reality, particularly focusing on the right to vote. Freedom is more than just a social status. Freedom is a divine gift bestowed upon us. Deuteronomy 16:12 reminds us, it says, remember that you were slaves in Egypt and follow these decrees carefully. Think about that. Now, why would the Deuteronomy writer write this? Now, conservative scholars believe that Moses wrote Deuteronomy. Why would Moses write, remember that you were slaves in Egypt? Why do you think he would write that? Remember that you were once slaves in Egypt. Why would he write them to remember that? Because when you don't remember, you make it easier to go back. When you don't remember, you will not cherish the blessing that you have in freedom. When you don't remember, you won't teach your kids about their freedom is a blessing, and they won't find meaning and purpose in their life when you don't teach them to remember. They got to remember. We got to remember. It's almost like some folks are ashamed of their ancestors, so they don't want to remember. But I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed, because it was my ancestors' strength and resiliency that I can stand today and tell you that I'm not ashamed. So I'm going to remember what they went through for me, and I'm going to protect the freedom. I once heard a hymn that said, "Before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave." That's what happens when you remember. As you say, you're not going to do this to me and my community ever again. This verse emphasizes the importance of remembering our past. Our freedom is not just for our benefit, but it's meant to be stewarded for the greater good. In a democracy, we can steward the greater good by voting. I thank God we live in a democracy, because in other types of governments, when they want to make changes, they got to always go to arms if they want to make a change. In our community, in our society, we got to go to the ballot box. Now, which one would you rather have? So I thank God for democracy. And we are called to be stewards. And voting isn't just for the president. Voting for local offices that directly impact your life, and for proposals that help to allocate and resources and funds for your community. I think about Acts 15. The apostles had to make an important decision about how they were going to serve the other nations and the Gentiles. So they came together to debate. They had a deliberation, and quite possibly using a vote to come to a decision on how to serve the Gentiles. This shows us that making decisions through collective participation is a practice that can be rooted in our faith. When you have it, it comes with great responsibility. We are the stewards of the liberties we possess, and your vote is a critical way to honor those who fought and sacrificed for our rights. It's our duty to use this gift wisely and ensure that we continue to progress toward justice and equality for all. By voting, we acknowledge the struggles of the past and contribute to shaping a future that reflects God's justice and love. We must not take this responsibility lightly, as each vote is a step towards safeguarding and expanding the blessings of our future for generations. Thank you. The second point I would like to make today is about the responsibility of voting. Voting is a moral and ethical responsibility. James 2:17 says, "Faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Faith without works is dead." This scripture underscores the importance of translating our faith into actions that benefit our community. I want you to consider the significant milestones in our history: the end of slavery, the defeat of Jim Crow segregation, the attainment of voting rights. These were not achieved just by prayer alone, but through the courageous actions of individuals who fought for justice. I thank God that abolitionists didn't just pray. I thank God they didn't just pray. I thank God that they put their faith into action. I thank God that the activists against Jim Crow segregation didn't just pray. They didn't just pray, but they put their faith into action. You know, I thank God that folks who said one person, one vote didn't just pray for it, but they put their faith into action. Faith without works is dead. Now, I believe in prayer. I believe in prayer, and I love gardening. I like having a garden, but I'm going to tell you, I can look at the ground and pray for a garden all day, and I'm going to end up with a garden of weeds. There'll be no cucumbers, no tomatoes, no watermelon, no eggplant, no asparagus. I will just have weeds. But if I want to actually see a garden, I've got to pray that God allows it to rain. I got to pray that God gives me some good soil. I got to pray that the earthworms do their job. But I'm going to also have to till that soil. I'm going to have to plant those seeds. I'm going to have to water that so I can have a harvest. I thank God that they didn't just pray, but they prayed with their feet. We must remember that sometimes we've got to pray with our feet. And today we need more than just prayers to combat the threats of fascism and injustice. We need active participation to ensure that these evils are kept at bay. Somebody knows what I'm talking about today. Because I don't got to say it. Y'all know what's understood. Don't have to be said. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And voting is one such action that has profound implications for justice and societal well-being. It's a way to live out our faith by contributing to the common good and upholding the values we believe in. Matthew 25:14-30, Jesus gives a parable that we call the parable of the talents. And Jesus tells the parable of the talents to illustrate the importance of gifts and opportunities God has given us. A master goes on a journey and entrusts his property to his servants. He gives 5 talents, a large sum, to one servant, 2 talents to another, and 1 talent to a third, each according to their ability. The first 2 servants invest and double their master's money, but the third servant buries his talent in the ground out of fear. And upon the master's return, he praises the first 2 servants for their faithfulness and rewards them by entrusting them with more responsibilities. However, he rebukes the third servant for his laziness and fear. The master takes the 1 talent from the third servant and gives it to the one who has 10. The parable concludes with the master stating, "For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them." The unproductive servant is cast into the outer darkness where there was weeping and gnashing of teeth. This parable teaches us that God expects us to use our gifts and talents and opportunities wisely and productively. That's what God expects from us. Every talent, every gift, every opportunity, you are to be using it for the glory of God. How many of us know that? Every opportunity, every gift, every talent that you have ought to be used for the glorification of God. And I came here to tell you today that amongst your list of talents, gifts, and opportunities, voting is an opportunity and a gift as well. And we are expected to be stewards over voting and our acts in democracy. Voting is a practical application of our faith and stewardship, ensuring that we contribute to the well-being of the world around us. We've got to use every talent, every gift, every opportunity to support the will of God. This action impacts justice, it impacts policy, it impacts leadership. Every time you go to the ballot booth, it counts. It contributes to the greater good. It is not just a right, but it's a responsibility to participate in the democratic process and ensure that our leaders and policies reflect our values and commitment to justice. Voting influences the laws and the regulations that govern our lives and can bring about changes needed to promote equality and fairness. So I'm just telling us today that voting should not just be seen as a civic duty, because we have an opportunity to take part in an active shaping of society that honors God's principles of justice, mercy, and love. It's a sacred act of stewardship. It's demonstrating our commitment to God's justice in the world. And so my final point for us today, and I thank you for your patience with me, is to act on the responsibility. To vote responsibly, we must stay informed about candidates and issues. I just want to talk about this staying informed, okay? Can I just talk about this for a moment, staying informed? I got to tell you that we can't just get our news from TikTok. Okay? We can't get on there. TikTok will have you thinking that there's little robots and vaccines and that the 5G towers are taking over your mind and all this crazy wild. They have you thinking that people live on the moon and that there's an inner earth and all these conspiracy theories. They have you thinking some wild stuff. And you watch it on TikTok and you see that the video has 20,000 views and you go out and say that stuff in public and the folks say, what is this person talking about? We can't get our news from TikTok. We can't get our news from TikTok. Because do you know that there are people who purposely put out disinformation and then they will pay robots to like it so it can go viral? And then they will shape the algorithm so it shows up on the screens of people who they want to see it, because they are trying to shift and shape society and to condition you to believe something that is against your own interests. Do you know that? We can't just get our news from TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, X, whatever. We can't just get our news from those sources. We've got to go to serious, verified sources of information. We've got to take the information that we consume very, very seriously. Let me ask you something. Who eats at just anybody's house? You just eat anywhere? Who just go eat at any old restaurant? Who just eats whatever put in front of them? I once went to a man's office. He had a can on the shelf that said canned possum. If I crack that can open for you, you going to just eat it? Right? No, you're not. You're going to be discerning, aren't you? You're going to say, well, who made this meal? What is this meat? What is this food? What is this? Right? You're going to ask questions about it before you consume it. That's the same way we've got to be with information. Discerning. What's the source? Where does it come from? Is it a valid source? Is this mainstream information? Is this fringe information? Who funded this information? We cannot just continue to accept anything that we see and hear on the internet, because there are a lot of bad actors who are trying to misguide and mislead and shape social outcomes. So we've got to be informed so that we can be discerning. Proverbs 18:15 says, the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out. And I'm saying that in this day and age, we've got to be willing to seek out wisdom, because there's some people who only want you to have alternative facts. And I don't want no alternative facts. Those sound like lies to me. You know what an alternative fact is? We talked about it in Sunday school this morning. An alternative fact is when folks have said what is truth is, it's not what is divine. Truth, they say truth is not what is divine. This is what they say. They say truth is not what is divine. They say truth is not what God wills. They say truth is what is most useful to me and my agenda. That's what this generation believes is truth. It's what is most useful to them. So if the lie is useful, it will be presented to you as truth. Brothers and sisters, that's not lamb theology. That's serpent ideology. That's what the serpent did in the garden. The serpent told alternative facts. And I don't know about you, but I don't want no information from the serpent. None of it. So we've got to be discerning, as the Proverbs writer says, the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out. I want us to also think about encouraging others. Hebrews 10:24 says, and let us consider how we may spur one another up toward love and good deeds. Now, I know we got some folks here that can cook, and we have some grandmothers and grandfathers here that know how to throw down. Raise your hand if you know how to throw down in the kitchen. Okay, y'all don't want nobody coming over your house. I see. They barely raising their hand, Minister Bowen. You got a few back ready at. There you go. Okay, good. So I heard one grandmother said, one grandmother told her family, she said, if you don't go vote, you can't come to Thanksgiving dinner. That's what he told him. He said, for you to come to Thanksgiving dinner, you need to bring your I voted sticker. What do you think about that? She wasn't messing around. But in all seriousness, folks, we've got to encourage one another because people are being led astray. They're being misled. They're being misguided. And now it's not the time for us to turn our back on those hard conversations. But you got to ask a person, why do you believe there's a waste of your time to vote? Why do you believe this? Why do you say this? Help me to understand. We've got to reason with folks because this is the time where we've got to step up in order to save the freedoms that our ancestors have fought for. So we've got to consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. It's a continuous commitment, folks. Galatians 6:9 says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. We must remain steadfast in our efforts to promote justice and equality through how we live our lives, through following Jesus Christ, and also through our civic duties. Voting is something that we do one time at the ballot. It's important, it's critical, we ought to do it. But we're really talking about a lifestyle that's committed to following Jesus. And I believe that Jesus, our Master Jesus, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, was deeply committed to social justice. That's why he visited the lepers. That's why he spent time with marginalized communities. That's why he healed the sick. That's why he helped the blind to see. That's why he helped the deaf to hear. That's why he stood the cause for marginalized women. That's why he stood up against abuse. He spoke truth to power because Jesus believed in justice. So what I'm talking about is an act that may begin at the ballot booth, but it doesn't stop at the ballot booth. This is about a lifestyle that we live of following Christ to serve the downtrodden, to serve the marginalized, to serve the broken, to serve the oppressed, to lift them up with every tool that we have. And voting is one tool of many that we have to use in our discipleship and following Jesus Christ. I think that the scripture says, let us not become weary in doing good. I think that when we hear people express apathy and skepticism about voting, often feeling that their vote doesn't matter or succumbing to conspiracy theories, I think that what we're seeing from them is a sort of weariness. They are weary. I think we can see this as weariness in some people, especially in a world that's filled with challenges and disappointments. However, it's essential to remember that the struggle for freedom and justice is ongoing. Angela Davis put it this way. Angela Davis said that freedom is a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle. Freedom is not something that you get and you put on the shelf to collect dust. But freedom is something that we must constantly protect. We must constantly look after. We must constantly maintain. We must constantly be aware of. Freedom is a constant struggle. This profound statement underscores that freedom requires maintenance and continuous effort. Think of freedom like a home. If you neglect the house, it will deteriorate. If you neglect your house, your roof will have leaks, mold will grow, infestations might take over. If you leave your house unattended, squatters may move in. Similar, our freedom was built with the blood, sweat, and tears of those who fought for our rights. They suffered, they bled, they were beaten so that we could participate in democracy. They understood the importance of preserving these rights, and we must maintain the house they built because freedom is not free. Freedom requires sacrifice. Freedom requires maintenance and protection. So I want us to consider the ways that we can honor their legacy by staying informed, by encouraging others, by committing ourselves to continuous participation in the democratic process. By doing so, we ensure that the hard-won freedoms we enjoy are preserved and strengthened for future generations. In conclusion, I just want to say that Juneteenth is a powerful reminder of the importance of freedom and the responsibilities that come with it. Voting is an act of gratitude and a commitment to the principles of justice and equality. We honor those who fought for our rights by actively participating in this process. If we don't vote, we run the risk of losing our right to vote because there are some people who want to strip the vote from us. This is no longer conspiracy theory. This is fact. There are over 100 voter suppression attempts taking place all over the country. There are folks who want to strip us of the Voting Rights Act. They want to strip us of voting rights. They want to suppress and gerrymander and redistrict us. They want to create long lines. They want to make laws where you cannot give a person a drop of water while they're waiting to vote. And what's so odd about that is folks who call themselves Christians say you cannot give a person a cold cup of water who's trying to vote. Isn't that something? Because I believe Jesus Christ said, whoever gives a cold cup of water in my name certainly will not lose their reward. So what kind of person who calls himself a Christian says it's illegal to give a person a cold cup of water? It's a person who's drawn away by hatred, racism, bigotry, and a dictatorship that they want to emerge. And what I'm saying to us today is that if we don't vote, if we don't encourage everyone we know to vote, we run the risk of losing our right to vote because there are some people who want to strip that right away from us. I believe a lot of people will not understand how important the vote is until it is gone. I don't think they're going to understand until it is gone, but hopefully that day never comes because we can get folks to wake up and realize the importance of the vote. Now, I'm not going to try to make you shout in my conclusion today. That will be next Sunday. But this Sunday, I just want to read you a few quotes from folks who thought it was important to vote. John Lewis said, "The vote is precious. It's the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democratic society, and we must use it." Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I have come to see more and more that one of the most decisive steps that the Negro can take is that little walk to the voting booth. That is an important step. We've got to gain the ballot and through that gain political power." Barack Obama said, "There's no such thing as a vote that doesn't matter. It all matters." Fannie Lou Hamer said, "I guess if I had any sense, I'd have been a little scared to register to vote, but what was the point of being scared? The only thing they could do was kill me, and it kind of seemed like they'd been trying to do that a little bit at that time since I could remember." Thurgood Marshall said, "Where you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out because this is your country, this is your democracy. Make it, protect it, pass it on." Sojourner Truth said, "Now if you want me to get out of the world, you had better get the women voting soon. I shan't go till I can do that." Shirley Chisholm said, "You don't make progress by standing on the sidelines whimpering and complaining. You make progress by implementing ideas." And Nelson Mandela, who spent many years in prison, busting up big rocks into little rocks, breathing in dust, sleeping on a hard bed with no pillow, said that the vote is the most powerful instrument ever devised by man for breaking down injustice and destroying the terrible walls which imprison men because they are different from other men. The right to vote is widely recognized as a right that is a preservative of all rights. Without equality at the polls, there is no self-governance. And finally, he said, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It's an idea which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it's an idea for which I'm prepared to die." I urge you, brothers and sisters, to actively participate in the democratic process. Now, thank you. Use your vote to honor those who fought for this right and to shape a better future. We had the Juneteenth holiday, thank God. Some of us had a day off Some of us retired, so don't matter no more. But those still in the workforce, some of y'all had a day off, and there was folks grilling out and having cookouts and playing Earth, Wind, and Fire and having a good time. Amen. And I thank God that we can celebrate freedom. But while we celebrate it, beloved, we got to also protect it. So Juneteenth is not just about celebrating freedom. Juneteenth is about also protecting freedom so that we don't have to go back to a day where we are marginalized and disenfranchised and ostracized by having our vote stripped away. Let us continue the journey toward true freedom by embracing our responsibilities as stewards of freedom. Brothers and sisters, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir today. I know a lot of you know that you ought to go vote. The truth of the matter is that there's a lot of people around us who are thinking about staying home. They're thinking about not voting. They're thinking about not taking part in this act of stewardship. And I want you to be encouraged today to use your voice to have those hard conversations with the young people in your life. And some of them not so young. It's older folks that think this way too. And encourage them to join us in the struggle for freedom. Let's go to God in prayer. Heavenly God, divine parent, we thank you for the gift and freedoms and responsibilities that we have. We ask you to guide us as we strive to be good stewards of all of our gifts. We ask you to help us to continue to use our voices, to find our voices, and to use that voice in every way that we can to promote your justice and equality, including in the very act of voting. Give us the wisdom to make informed decisions. Help us to not be carried away by disinformation, by misinformation. Give us the courage to encourage others around us, grandbabies, grandsons, granddaughters, sons, daughters, grandmothers, mothers, fathers, cousins, neighbors, somebody at the barbershop, somebody at the hair salon. Help us, dear Lord, to have the courage to encourage others to do the same. Help us to honor those who fought for our rights, dear Lord. That great cloud of witnesses that now looks down on us on high, that wants us to continue to struggle for freedom, that wants us to continue to protect freedom. Dear Lord, we ask you to help us to honor those folks who fought for our rights by actively participating in the blessing of a democratic process. Thank you, dear Lord, for this community, for this congregation, for these saints, for those here in person, and for those over live stream. It's in Jesus' name we pray and ask all these things. Amen. Brothers and sisters,